You know when you fire up a game and it goes from a blank window to this whole immersive world? Well, that's not magic, it's code. And today, we're going to look at the very first few lines that breathe life into that empty screen.
Okay, let's get into it. The best way to understand this is to stop thinking about code as just text, and instead, imagine we're giving instructions to a very special, very fast artist living inside the computer. All right, first things first, we need to meet the most important part of our whole visual setup. It's a special function that has a really important job.
In PyGame 0, that function is called draw. You can think of def draw as the official job description for our digital artist. Anything and everything we want the player to see has to be put inside this draw function. If it's not in there, guess what? It's completely invisible.
And when I say tireless, I mean it. This painter is insanely fast. It doesn't just draw the screen once and call it a day. Nope, it completely erases and redraws everything 60 times every single second. That incredible speed is what makes motion in games look so smooth.
So every good painter needs a palette, right? They need colors to work with. But how in the world do we mix colors with code?
Well, computers use what's called the RGB model. They've basically got these tiny red, green, and blue lights. They can set the brightness of each one, from 0, which is totally off, all the way up to 255, which is full blast. By mixing these, you can create millions of colors. So for example, 128, 128, 128 mixes all three at about half intensity, which gives us a nice simple gray.
Now, you could just type out those numbers every time you need that gray color. But what if later you decide, I want a slightly darker gray? You'd have to go on a scavenger hunt through your entire code, finding every single 128, 128, 128, and changing it by hand. Trust me, that gets messy fast.
And this is where we start coding smarter, not harder. Instead of using those raw numbers, we give the color a name. We just define gray once, at the top. Suddenly, our code is way easier to read. And if we want to change that shade of gray, we only have to change it in one single spot. This is like a core idea for writing good, clean code that you won't hate later.
So this idea of naming our color actually brings up a really crucial distinction. We need to understand the difference between the color recipe on our palette and the actual color that's on our paintbrush right now.
Gray, which you'll notice is written in all caps, is what we call a constant. Think of it as a permanent, fixed recipe for a color. We set it, and we don't plan on ever changing it. But track color, in all lowercase, that's a variable. This is the painter's paintbrush, the color they're using right now. We can start it off holding the gray paint, but later in the game, like say when the player crashes, we can easily tell the painter, hey, drop the gray and pick up the red instead. Okay, so we've got our painter, we've got our colors. How do we actually give the painter its to-do list? In Python, the answer is kinda cool and surprisingly simple. It's all about spacing.
Python uses indentation, that little bit of space at the start of a line, to group code. So when it sees def draw : it knows a block of instructions is about to start. Any line that is pushed in or indented right below it is considered part of that painter's to-do list for that one frame. It's a really clean, visual way to see how your logic is structured. All right, let's put all of this together now and look at the actual 5 lines of code that are going to paint our very first game screen. We're going to break it down line by line.
First up, we make our constant. We're essentially telling the computer, hey, for the rest of this program, whenever you see the word gray, what I really mean is the color made from these 3 numbers. This is our permanent recipe.
We do the exact same thing for red. Now, we're not actually using it yet, but that's okay. We're just preparing our palette, getting our colors mixed and ready for when we need them later on. And here's where we make our first choice. We create that track color variable, our painter's paintbrush, and we tell it to start by dipping into the gray recipe we just made. So the first color it's going to use is gray. Now we officially define our painter function. This line is the big signal to the computer that says, get ready. The indented lines that follow are the instructions you need to run 60 times every second to draw stuff on the screen. And finally, here is the first, and for now, only, instruction on our painter's to-do list. Screen.fill is the command to just paint the whole background. And what color does it use? It uses whatever color is currently stored inside our track color variable, which right now is gray.
And that's it. These 5 simple lines all work together. They define a palette, they pick a starting color, and they tell a super fast painter to fill the background over and over again. This is literally the visual heartbeat of our game.
So yeah, a solid gray screen is where we start, but now you know the secret.
You know how to give the painter instructions. The possibilities are absolutely endless. You've just learned the foundation for drawing anything you can possibly imagine. So, what would you tell the painter to draw next?